feature presentation.
Eric, as the great band Stained once said, "It's been a while." Welcome back to the Untitled Movie Podcast. I am one of your hosts, Matt Rohrbeck, alongside, he's allergic to tomatoes, but he is tomato meter approved, Eric Marchand.
It has been a while. And thinking about that, it was funny. After a screening and heading on the GO train, you sometimes catch, concerts or, post-game travelers that are heading back. But I was thinking about new metal in the early 2000s on this one ride because there was a Godsmack concert that was getting out, and everybody was talking about how one of the Evanescence concerts recently was one of the best they'd ever been to. So it felt like I traveled. It felt like I traveled back to the early 2000s on that GO train ride.
Well, today we're going to stick with 2023. Yes, we haven't done this show in a while. So hello, if you only listen to this show, but we have been doing Untitled movie reviews. Eric and I have been reviewing movies pretty much every week for the last little while. We did take, let's say, a little bit of a break earlier this
hiatus.
Year. Maybe one of your co-hosts had a mental breakdown. Maybe many other things were going on in my life and in the world, but I took a break. I'm good. I'm feeling much better. I've been feeling great for a while now. Maybe not great, but I feel good for a while now. I was going to get into all of that on this show, and maybe one day I will. But more importantly, it's TIFF season, Eric. So TIFF Talk had to return. My mental health let's lock it up. We can have a therapy session later. I'm doing okay. So
we'll do it during TIFF. That will be where we'll break down because of the festival.
No, I think I'm good. I've been feeling good for the last couple months. It was hard for me to go to the movies. I had a panic attack watching John Wick, but I've been able to go back, and I love going to the movies again. I'm very excited for TIFF. I will kind of go into what I was going through, as well as many other things we missed while we were gone. I want to do a Universal Studios review, as well as a preview for their Halloween Horror Nights that's coming up. So that's going to be a future episode. Eric and I are going to go back down to Fan Expo and check that out. So that'll be kind of a discussion topic. So this show is back. It might be, monthly or bi-weekly or something like that, or sporadically whenever Eric and I have something we want to talk about. We just don't want to force ourselves into committing every single week we're going to do this show, because sometimes we have busy lives outside of this, and we love doing it. The reviews we're going to be consistent with. We're going to be reviewing stuff all the time. This show is just going to change to, when we have something that we want to talk about, we'll jump on here and do that in a long form conversational way. But yes, Eric, we are, 2 weeks, 22 days away. So just over 3 weeks away from the 2023 Toronto International Film Festival, our favorite time of the year, our biggest time of the year for this show, for the review show. We usually go absolutely ham when it comes to the Toronto International Film Festival. And this year, we're going to talk about it. So we're going to review a ton of stuff, and I will still be very, very busy over those couple of weeks during the festival. But this show is going to be fully dedicated to previewing the entire 2023 festival. Usually last year and the years past, we kind of broke it up into those TIFF Talk segments when we did the show more consistently. But this is our full TIFF preview. The schedule is out today as we're recording. You guys can start building your schedules. Maybe you already have. Maybe you're listening to this while you build your schedule. That's always awesome. Please go over to TIFFer and use that. That's what Eric and I will be using as well. But yeah, Eric, how are you, man?
Well, Matt, that's a loaded question. It's been, in terms of, the hiatus, which I'm very glad that you took the time for yourself, and I think anybody can learn from that experience and understand that everybody has a point in their lives where maybe they just need some time to recalibrate or think things through, maybe reinvent themselves, or just, again, take a long vacation. Because when we're doing something like this, we love it and we don't consider it necessarily work or our jobs, but because movies are, a weekly thing, and there's no real holiday. Even when the holidays are coming, there's actually
no off season. Yeah.
there's more work
there's
to do,
January and
but even then
August.
we have Sundance, because of the
totally,
virtual
yeah.
aspect of it. So there's always something going on, and you forget about your own mental health and wellness and the anxiety that you have. So, for you to be so candid about your experience, not only on the podcast, but on various social media websites, and just, saying, I need a break, that's a really important thing. And I'm really proud of you for doing that. And I think a lot of people are, because it's something that a lot of people don't still know how to admit to themselves or to others. It's a very hard thing to do. And so when you're thinking about yourself and how you're putting yourself through a routine that might be very familiar, after a while it can almost be unbearable. So yeah, and getting back to me, I took this week off a little bit, actually, because I was supposed to do some reviews for Strays and Blue Beetle, but sadly my uncle passed away, and it was unexpected. I just needed a little bit of time off, some breather room before the festival began.
Yeah.
And my uncle on my dad's side of the family, my aunt through marriage, my aunt and uncle, he was one of those guys that was unbelievably kind and considerate, and always made you feel welcome when you were there, and also just a very funny individual, to the point where I remember when I was younger and I was having anxiety and panic attacks about spiders growing up. The first thing, when he found out, when I was at Peterborough, because it's where they lived, he's like, "Oh, I found out that you're afraid of spiders." And Uncle Sid was just like, "Well, don't worry, I've got the cure." Sat me down and we watched Arachnophobia for the first time.
I knew that was coming. Yeah.
And it only made things worse.
Oh yeah, that movie's horrifying.
Afterwards, I was literally looking at every corner, nook, and cranny for any arachnid. It got to the point where my mom called Sid directly and said, "You ass."
Yeah.
And he was just one of those guys that always kind of made things a little bit better, and I'll miss him. My brothers will miss him, and it's just, sometimes you need a little bit of time because of something being so unexpected. And there's other things in your life that you're juggling, and when you're thrown that ball, it kind of throws everything else out of proportion, and you're kind of thrown for a loop a little bit. And so, I think this week in particular, even though I'm still proactive in doing, upcoming reviews we'll have reviews for Bottoms and Gran Turismo and things like that. But, I think you just have to stop and breathe every now and again. And especially before something as big as TIFF comes up, because it is such a monolith of not only just a festival, but as an experience, and something that is culturally significant to what we love to do on a general basis, which is talk and write and record and think about movies. And this gives us a time to really celebrate that. It'll break you down. It will make you question things. You'll be loopy by the end of the festival, but there's no other experience quite like it. And even though we might be more critical of this year's lineup compared to previous years, I do believe that, having the festival in some sort of in-person component, as it has been this year coming up and the last year post-pandemic, even though COVID's never going away, is a sign that the festival will still be going strong. And obviously there are factors that have affected it this year, specifically with the strike. But we will try to find the positive as much as we will be critical, because I do think, and I'm not trying to speak for Matt, but you look at Venice, you look at New York, and when you're reading a lot of the press releases, you can kind of make an assumption of what movies are going to play at Telluride as well. And you look
based
at
on if there's a world premiere, a North American premiere,
or Canadian
international
premiere,
Canadian premiere. Yeah.
Yeah. And with those film festivals happening around the same time, Venice before, New York afterwards, Telluride kind of during and overlapping.
Right before, like that. Yeah.
Yeah. I have to say that those lineups are more exciting than TIFF's. And it's not to say that TIFF doesn't have some movies that are, worth keeping an eye on and making sure that, if you really want to see a certain film from a filmmaker that either is prolific or only makes a movie every couple of years or every 10 years, there's still the stuff there. It's going to be hard not to compare it to those other festivals and think like, oh, we missed out on something.
Yeah, when you're talking about, let's get into it. I agree with you. So it's an interesting year, and as much as TIFF says that the SAG and the WGA strikes didn't really affect what they programmed, I don't know if I fully believe that. But and this is nothing against the movies that they've programmed. I think when we're talking about those kind of bigger, flashier titles, and I mean that not in the sense of like when a festival programs like a blockbuster or something with a lot of stars. It's like, those films from prolific and interesting filmmakers that are kind of on, everyone's, on our kind of, most anticipated films of 2023 and things like that kind of show up at some of these other festivals. And I'm not trying to sound like, entitled that they should be at TIFF or anything. It's just when you look at the lineup as a whole this year, I'm a little bit underwhelmed, and that's no insult to the movies that are playing, because again, I'm not familiar with a lot of the movies playing, and that sometimes is a good thing. When it comes to after the festival, my year is going to be a little bit weird because I have some other stuff going on where I have some conflicts in time, so I probably won't be able to see as much as I usually do this year, but I'm still going to try to get that 20 film mark, which is like, in previous years, 25, 30 is sometimes what we would get to, even though that was kind of crazy. But maybe that lends itself to more discovery, which is a good thing. And I'm not talking about Discovery, the program, but I just mean
or the channel,
discovery in general when you're going to TIFF this year. And I think if you're open to that and you're open to going, okay, this description of this film looks interesting, maybe I'll go see that. Or, oh, it has this one person that I like, or it's directed by this one person I like. Okay, I'll go check that out, even though I don't know much about it. I think we could change our perspective by the end and go, oh my God, I discovered a couple films that I had no idea were coming out. Siri, I'm not talking to you. Yeah, thanks, Siri. It's in my headphones. It's not speaking to you. Yeah, I know you didn't get it. Okay, yep. No, I don't want to try again. Thank you. I think that by the end of it, we might shift our perspective and kind of go, oh, I saw these movies that I wasn't expecting to love, and I do love them, and now they're on my top 15 of the year list. Or it could go the way going, oh man, we missed out on the Fincher, and oh man, we missed out on the Yorgos Lanthimos movie, and oh man, we missed out on, whatever else we want to list.
Cinematic Auteur, Bradley Cooper's Maestro.
Yeah. Those kind of big flashier movies, I feel like, and TIFF usually is that festival that has those kind of movies. So I'm curious from a public perspective, because this is a public film festival, that will they take a hit on that, or will people just be excited to go to premieres and things like that, especially maybe because stars aren't going to be attending? Some will. It gets a little bit complicated with, SAG waivers that they've handed out for films, people coming as directors and things like that, and producers.
Actors as directors, specifically.
Yeah, actors as directors, but some of them, like with Bradley Cooper at Venice, is not going in solidarity with SAG. So it's going to get a little... The one thing TIFF hasn't dropped is their guest lists, I think, other than the in-conversation pieces and stuff that they're doing. I could be wrong, but I didn't see that come through. And they usually sent out a giant list of here's everyone attending the festival this year. So I think it's interesting, will the public... They still have premium ticket prices on a lot of these premieres. A lot of the premieres aren't those kind of big, flashy movies that people are excited about, I think, personally. So is this a down here? I don't want to say that. necessarily, but I am disappointed at some of the films that did show up at Venice. We don't know about Telluride yet. At New York, the 3 Centerpiece films at New York are really, really great. Venice has some stuff, like I already mentioned, with the Fincher movie and things like that. And then you go even to Fantastic Fest too. You just mentioned Eric is getting things like, not that The Creator is like a film festival movie, but anyone who listens to this show, and maybe you don't listen to this show, if you're listening to this previous show, I'm the blockbuster big movie guy. Eric's the more cinephile guy, and that's why this show works. And we show each other movies. I mean, Eric would see all the big shit anyway, for the most part. I'd maybe make him watch some garbage.
I saw The Flash.
It wouldn't. Yeah. But Eric does introduce me to other stuff and go, no, you should check this out. It's from this filmmaker, blah, 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 blah. So that's why it works out. But I am that guy who, I like those big flashy movies. I like those premieres at TIFF. I like them for this show as well, because that gets people to come listen to us. No offense to some of these other movies. We do well with like smaller, the A24 stuff, but that's even on the like blockbuster level of indie cinema, if you can call it that.
The Marvel of indie cinema.
Indies. So like, when we talk about Beau is Afraid or Everything Everywhere All at Once, yeah, sure, that brings people in as well. So yeah, when we talk about the Nick Cage A24 movie, that's
Dream Scenario
that's there this year, it's that kind of stuff that will still get interest from people, especially those kind of borderline, film bro-y, but also film fan kind of people. And then
Nick Cage lovers.
And then you also get, maybe there's a lot of films here that I'm not familiar with, but like the cinephile people are really, really excited about. So I'm excited to kind of go through the entire kind of program, because I admittedly have kind of glanced at everything. I've checked off movies, and a lot of movies do sound interesting. TIFF does a great job at their little blurbs of going, this is what this movie's about. Here's who's in it. And I go, well, that sounds interesting. And then I heart it. But then when I'm building my schedule, I go, all right, can I fit this in? Do I want to do this? Do I want to prioritize the bigger movies? So, it's an interesting year. I'll leave it at that.
Well, going back quickly, because I think you were going to mention it as well, is that Fantasia got The Creator, and they have a couple other movies that you would expect maybe would play, Midnight Madness. There's a film called Stop Motion that's playing Fantasia Fest. And so there are films like that as well, where it does feel like, oh, maybe these movies would play. And I wanted to ask, like, why do you think, we talked about the strike, but why else do you think that maybe some of these movies skipped TIFF? Because, and also, do you think it's more disappointing considering how big last year was with The Fabelmans?
Yeah, the last couple TIFFs have had some bangers, right? But like, this is the first TIFF in a long time where I'm like, I said this to you, where, maybe it's me getting older as well, but like there's usually a few films where if I don't see this, I'm going to be upset. Not like upset, like I should be able to see this movie. That kind of entitlement upset. No, but more so like, oh man, I'll be really bummed if I miss that at TIFF. And yes, a lot of these movies we're talking about come out in October or November, like you don't have to wait that long, or have distribution in general. So like in the end, we're going to see these movies. Eric and I are in the Critics' Choice Association. We'll get screeners and shit like that. But like, I love the atmosphere at TIFF. It's my favorite place to watch movies, at those premieres, at those venues you don't really get to see things from. So like that's why I'm disappointed that those bigger movies, which I can go see at my local Cineplex, or I can watch on a screener that they send me, but that's not the same thing. I like seeing them with 3,000 people at TIFF in a venue I don't get to watch movies from.
Princess of Wales, or one of these
Thompson, or Scotiabank IMAX, which doesn't play some of these movies a lot, and like Lightbox, which doesn't play first run movies a lot. They do some smaller things and things like that. So that's why I want those movies to play as well.
You got to get that with the Bulgaria ads. You know?
Yeah. Bulgaria.
Pardon me.
Bulgaria ads. Visit Bulgaria.
Hey man, it's hip and happening.
Hey, I don't doubt it. Your other question of being, why didn't they get them this year, and why? It's always a competition. As much as these festivals, I think it was like a year or two ago, where I think during the pandemic, when they're like, it was all kumbaya, like we're all going to work together because like, you know, we need to bring people back and things like that. We're going to share all the films. It doesn't matter who gets premieres, who doesn't, right?
Yeah.
Like I think that's all clearly out the window now. And you can see that they go, no, if you're going to come here, I want it to be at least a North American premiere, or I at least want it to be a international premiere or something like that. And I think when you go into, yeah, it's hard to say, man. Like we really don't know what these
the
studios
behind
are
the
thinking.
scenes kind
Like,
of aspect of it, the strategies behind it, because there are some films that are being relaunched that played Sundance or Cannes, and so those movies are getting their second life to remind critics and audiences that they're coming out this year, that they might be awards contenders, things like that. Then you have movies that are getting their launch at the festival, that, you know, the first time people will be seeing some of these movies for the first time, and they'll kind of be making you know, a make or break kind of feel at the festival, and sort of like defining their run for the future. And then you do have other films that are, you know, playing the festival that are looking for distribution. And I think TIFF, that's another aspect of it that we didn't talk about and we don't get into too much because we don't cover it. But TIFF is also not only a public festival, but it's very much a, you know, a buyer's market, and it's all about sort of acquisitions. And so, you know, TIFF this year might be affected by that as well, because of the strike, and you know, what's being picked up and distributed, or what's being screened for potential you know, studios to you know, take under their various catalogs for the coming year, because again, a lot of this stuff might not come out until 2024.
Yeah, so if it gets picked up during the festival. And that's always a great thing about TIFF. But like, so maybe these movies with distributors you don't need per se. But I kind of push back on that as well. Because like I just think though, like maybe studios, or I have no idea, I'm just speculating here, obviously, but like maybe they think you get lost in the shuffle at TIFF because there is so much, and it is, you know, 10 days, and like it's not set up in the way. I think New York is picking up steam a little bit. New York's always been a great festival. They've had great movies, and you know, they always get things that TIFF doesn't have. Sometimes they get a lot of stuff that TIFF does have, and they do share titles sometimes. But like maybe now you usually see that, you know, Venice stuff doesn't necessarily affect the North American film festivals for the most part, because it's like, okay, well, we can have a North American premiere. It doesn't matter if it played Venice, it can also premiere here. And I think you're seeing this year, a lot of the times it's like TIFF in New York fighting over stuff. And I don't know if this is a real thing, but that's how it looks on the outside, because then you have movies that go to Venice and then they either go to TIFF, or, you know, Telluride's its own thing. I almost like don't even think about Telluride. It's like this rich,
but it still is a launch pad for a lot of the awards movies. And I do feel that does take the thunder out of TIFF sales a little bit right before that festival begins.
That festival is so niche in the sense of, it's like, you know, some critics go if your outlet can afford to send you, and then the people who, you know, live there go to it, and like, or the wealthy people go to it, and like those, like I rarely think about Telluride, because a lot of the times things that premiere at Telluride do come to TIFF right after, and things like that as well. So anyways, what I mean is like the Venice North American thing, like, you know, New York, I think the way it's set up with its opening night, its Centrepiece, and its closing night film, and they've been really great at making sure those three films are kind of like big premiere titles, where again, not a shot at TIFF, but their opening and closing night films doesn't have that same prestige to them for the most part. This year we'll get into the opening night film. I think that's that's my most anticipated film of the festival, probably.
Yeah, I would agree.
So they nailed it this year. But I just don't think it has the same cachet as the New York one, where the New York is
not the Michael Haneke movie cachet.
Yeah. It's a very tight festival in the sense that they don't program as many movies, and they really focus on what they want to play. It's very curated. And so maybe studios are going, you know, in New York, you know, TIFF was always that big international film festival, and New York felt always weirdly more local, but maybe that's me because I'm from Toronto. but now New York, I feel like, is getting on that same level. And maybe people who go to New York all the time are like, it's always been on the same level as TIFF. And I mean, yes, I went to New York, 10 years ago and to that film festival, and I love it. And we've been a couple times since.
You got really sick once.
Oh, I did. Yeah, that was brutal. But and we might go back this year. Who knows, right? Like, because they are playing a few films that aren't playing Toronto. Like they have
But they're three big movies. They're
Ferrari, Priscilla, and
May December.
May December, yeah.
May December
all playing
played
Venice as well. That's the point I was trying to make.
And May December played or debuted at Cannes, right?
Yeah,
and
May December was Cannes, yeah.
And that got picked up by Netflix at Cannes. And then Priscilla and Ferrari are playing Venice as well. And then the most interesting aspect about Priscilla is that Priscilla was actually shot in Toronto.
Yeah,
so it's just and Virgin Suicides was as well. But it was, that thinking is also kind of fascinating when it comes to like, okay, well, you have, this auteur filmmaker like Sofia Coppola, who shot a movie in Toronto about Priscilla Presley and sort of, taking a very different stance based on the footage that we've seen through the trailer, that this is going to be a complete opposite to Baz Luhrmann's Elvis and sort of how we see Priscilla Presley. And there's going to be, I think, an interesting conversation there and how that dynamic is handled, and those questions were brought up in Elvis, where it kind of swept a lot of that stuff under the rug because it didn't want to deal with any of the problematic issues pertaining to that relationship. So
where this should focus.
Yeah. and I think like a lot of people don't really maybe know Priscilla Presley as well. Like I think our generation probably knows her better as one of the leads in the Naked Gun movies than as, Elvis's ex, wife. And so that will be interesting as well. So you're kind of reintroducing a cultural icon to a new generation. And so those things are just like, again, like talking about that, I think is a lot more interesting than what a lot of the stuff that TIFF has. And I know, because I want to slight, or I don't need to sound entitled. And I think that those are the things we need to keep reaffirming.
And even starting this preview show with talking about what they don't have isn't necessarily how we wanted to do this. It just naturally happened.
Yeah.
And I think it's a fair point to start off with, because we're talking about how we feel about the lineup as a whole. Like they're, if you just look at Venice having, like we said, Maestro from Bradley Cooper, you got The Killer from David Fincher, you have Poor Things from Yorgos Lanthimos, you have, Priscilla, you have Ferrari, you have those kind of heavy hitters there. I think Ava DuVernay has a film there as well.
Castle.
Right?
Yeah.
And things like that. So, TIFF, New York got a couple of those. I'm sure Telluride will get some of them, and TIFF didn't. But TIFF does have films, and films we are
it does have about. Films.
We are excited about a lot of the festivals. So I mean, as a whole, to kick it over to the more positive side of things, I think we're both psyched for the opening night film, which is The Boy and the Heron from Studio Ghibli. And
Miyazaki is back out of retirement. And I think the only thing I don't like about what I've seen so far is that they changed the title. And it would have been amazing if How Do You Live was the title, because we could have been quoting Lily, how do you live?
Which is a very good TIFF joke.
TIFF joke.
I've thought of the exact same thing. But that's a big get for TIFF. Yes, the movie's already out in Japan, and it's playing in theaters there, but this is the kind of international premiere of the film, and that's a huge get from a legendary filmmaker, a legendary studio, highlighting animation in the opening night film, which is amazing. I think that's a very amazing get that you're not seeing pop up at these other festivals, and a huge opening night film that I think is probably both of our, like we said, our most anticipated film of the festival. And that hasn't happened for the opening night film in a little while. It's always an up and down thing with the opening night. I loved when they had Looper, and there's been some more
Score, a hockey musical.
Yeah. So, it's stuff like that makes it not a prestige spot. Right. But I'm so glad that, having a Studio Ghibli title and a movie that we don't know a ton about, even though it's out already. There were some screenshots that finally got dropped, I think, the other day, and I did look at them, and yes, it looks like a Studio Ghibli movie. So like that's great. So I'm excited for it. I don't know really anything about it, and
but that's what makes it more exciting,
yeah.
right? Because there hasn't been a lot of advertising on it, and it's rare that even in an international market that there isn't a trailer or really any production stills up until now. And so, that approach to marketing would not happen in this day and age. You want to get people into the theaters and to know about the movie you're pitching. And Miyazaki is one of those filmmakers, one of the few filmmakers that can be afforded just to say,
sight
this
unseen,
this is this
movie.
director's film who, is coming, who's basically been retired, and The Wind Rises was his last movie. For him to come back and do this, potentially this last film, is a big deal. And for TIFF to get that, it is the reverse this year, where usually the festival as a whole, there's a lot of exciting things to see. Last year with the Fabelmans and Glass Onion, that was a fun double bill going back to back, but that was in the midst of the festival, where usually, like you just said, the opening night movie is kind of lukewarm at best, and it's everything else that comes afterwards that's more exciting, where the Boy and the Heron is kind of the most exciting thing to kind of start the festival. And going back to your point, that's not necessarily a bad thing, because it could end up a little bit like Sundance this year, where maybe there's something that's not on everybody's radar as of yet, surprises people in a way. Like you the other thing you should always look at, if you're interested in certain programs, look at the programmers, see what they're programming outside of, like Peter Kaplowski, for example. Like, he programmed How to Blow Up a Pipeline, Midnight Madness, head programmer. He programmed How to Blow Up a Pipeline in Platform, and that was a movie that played near the end of the festival and surprised, I think, everybody that saw that film in one way or another, because nobody thought
still in
one
our
way
top
or another.
5 films of the year, at least.
Absolutely.
In mine. I think
yeah.
it's in yours as well, but
a great movie. And so, like, if you like a certain program and you see a head programmer's name in another program or another selection, give it a shot, because that might mean something there. That might be telling you that, oh, maybe there's an adjacent quality to where their origin is, like where their setup is. And so, like, this year again, Peter programmed Dream Scenario, which also shot in Toronto, and so that could be telling you something about that movie in that section.
Absolutely. So let's start with those programs. I mean, let's kick it off with the galas. We were already talking about The Boy and the Heron. What we're going to do here is go through each and every program. I'll go through and list the films off, and Eric and I will talk about the program as a whole. So let's kick it off with the gala presentations. Let's start with A Normal Family. Then we have Concrete Utopia. We have Dumb Money. I was at a GameStop this morning, and I've been to a GameStop 3 times in the last week. I'll get into that story maybe when we talk about Dumb Money. We have Fair Play, which maybe is our first TIFF review. Did we do a full review for Fair Play?
Yeah, for Sundance.
Yeah, we did. Yeah. So you guys can check that out right now over on Untitled Movie Reviews. Just search Sundance Fair Play, and I'm sure it'll pop up somewhere.
You're selling me on it.
No, we both, I think, had mixed feelings about that movie, but well,
it's not an erotic thriller, and that was the thing that I was fearing would happen. Did with that trailer.
I didn't watch it yet.
They're playing it like an erotic thriller.
Yeah, of course. Finest Kind, Flora and Son, another Sundance film that we did not see because it only played in person. It did not play the digital side of Sundance, so I'm excited to finally check that out. Hate to Love, Nickelback. Hell yeah. We have Lee. We have, is it NYAD or is it Naiad?
Naiad, I think.
Naiad. We have Sly. Is Sly the closing night?
Yes, that's the Stallone documentary.
Yeah. We have Smugglers. We have Solo, not a Star Wars story, but we have Swan Song. We have Thank You for Coming. We have The Boy and the Heron, and we have the end we start from. Sorry, that's not the end. The Movie Emperor, The New Boy, and The Royal Hotel. Eric, anything stand out to you? I know we've already talked about The Boy and the Heron. We talked about the couple Sundance films that are kind of carryovers, but anything from that group of films that is either on your short list or that you're kind of interested in?
Yeah, I think The Royal Hotel is one that I'm very curious about because I liked Kitty Green's narrative that was loosely based on the Weinstein controversy called The Assistant with Julia Green.
Yeah, very good movie, yeah.
Yes, and so you have two backpackers that are basically stranded in this isolated location, I think in Australia, and basically have to get jobs working at a local pub. And, it's not as savory a place for women as it should be. And tension and anxiety ensues. And so Neon picked that up, and it is from a filmmaker who has dabbled in both narrative and nonfiction feature filmmaking, which I think is going to be very exciting. Julia Green is back to work. Not Julia Green, it's Julia Garner, pardon me. Back to work with Kitty Green, pardon me. And you have Jessica Henwick, Hugo Weaving. So I think that that's going to be one that will possibly have a bit of a breakout here if it does, if everything kind of goes the way that it seems to be with that movie, because you have somebody who's already proven themselves with The Assistant, and that's a movie that got under a lot of people, including myself, skin with how it depicted in a kind of very observational, non-intrusive manner with dealing with a studio executive, but from the point of view of an assistant who is trying to kind of make a name for herself. And Julia Garner in that role in The Assistant was fantastic in a very subtle, but still disturbed and ultimately complicit performance. And I think that's one movie that will definitely have a lot of people maybe surprised if it does well. Like, that's one to keep an eye on, I think.
That wasn't on my radar. I did not realize that Kitty Green directed The Assistant. That's awesome. I am now excited for that. So I really enjoyed is the wrong word, but I thought The Assistant was a very good film.
It was a very captivating movie that had something to say about the Me Too movement, but also the complicit nature of people working in those environments.
Yeah.
But without saying it directly and telling you how to feel.
It was the right amount of subtle and quiet and but still devastating and very, very good. I'll jump in and Dumb Money's one where I'll say that I'm like kind of looking forward to it because I do like Craig Gillespie, but I don't know if this whole like GameSpot like hedge fund kind of manipulation of the stock market thing is like too recent for me to really kind of go, ooh, I want a movie about that. Like, or if it's even interesting enough for me to like want that. And, I'm open to it. I like the cast quite a bit. I was, like I just mentioned, I've been at a GameStop, fucking like 4 times in the last week because I traded in my Nintendo Switches to get the new Nintendo Switch OLED. I had to trade in. One of the kids messed something up, so I had to go back and then get it, and they didn't have the Switch in stock. Anyways, it is a nightmare. But like the manager was very
that
nice
should be the movie.
Yeah, no, it's not very exciting. Eric, I'm all back in on Pokemon though, and I might be back in on Pokemon Go, and I know you never left. So
I know I didn't. Well, I use it for walking, and it kind of gives me a good idea of like how many kilometers I've walked. And I know I have an iWatch and things like that, but it's just kind of fun every now and then. So
yeah. So
would you say that you're selling or buying on this one?
Man, I'm kind of in the middle. I guess hold. I maybe sell, but like I don't know. Like I really like I, Tonya. Cruella I thought was serviceable in it was Cruella was right at the end. It was during the pandemic, right? And I feel like it was at the tail end of me needing to watch those Disney, and I know Cruella is not like a shot for shot remake or like a 1-to-1 remake like some of the other Disney live action ones are, but I felt like he brought enough of himself into that movie that I enjoyed it.
Which is basically him copying filmmakers like Martin Scorsese, where it's wall-to-wall music, hyperkinetic editing, a rise or downfall of characters. You even saw that with the Pam and Tommy series that he was a creative on and directed a few
which
episodes.
We liked quite a bit,
but we had some problems with the consent aspect of not asking Pamela Anderson herself. And then, but also he's a journeyman.
Girl, quite a bit too. So like, again, just like him, I'm a little bit all over the place with it, where I'm like, I think I'm interested in it enough because of the cast. And obviously, I am a video game guy, but like, it's more about the stock market than it is about actual GameStop. It's just like why they chose, GameStop to be that thing. So like, I like Paul Dano, I like Seth Rogen. I like everyone involved. So like, I'm kind of, the trailer didn't do much for me, and I will say that.
The Pete Davidson of it all is kind of a turn off, even though I'm sure it's a smaller role. But it's also just interesting as well. This movie is coming out in a year where we have gotten a ton of product placement based movies or films about IP, whether it be something like Barbie or BlackBerry and Air, where you're selling or advertising, or even Gran Turismo, where you're selling and advertising the product as much as you are the story. And it almost works as like a two-way street in that sense, where you get the kind of idiosyncratic character arc of the poor kind of taking one back from the rich and inheriting some of the wealth and spreading that equally amongst themselves. But then you also have, you mentioned the GameStop stuff. And then you have like the advertising of even just, Wall Street in general and how that all kind of plays out. And it does feel like, some of these movies are more disingenuous than others. And I think that can be also, I think we could be a little bit burnt out by that at this point, because we've gotten so many of these kind of films.
It's so recent. Like this just happened a few years ago, right?
Yeah.
Like, and I just like, it's sometimes like interesting when they happen 20 plus years ago or something like that. And you're like, oh yeah, remember that? Okay, let's see a retelling of that. It's like, I don't know if I need this like right
But that
away.
didn't stop movies about 9/11 coming out in 2006, right? Or 2007. And you had United 93, which is a great film, but
I get capitalizing not on national disasters, tragedies like that, but
even that is a capital. People do capitalize on
absolutely
those things.
Yeah. So I mean, I guess I get it from the sense of like wanting to do it now while people remember it, rather than in 20 years people not giving a shit about it. So I think it kind of goes both ways. So anything else, kicking it back over to you that you're excited about from the galas?
I can't think of anything off the top of my head, but the Royal Hotel is the one I would think. I think it's interesting that it's in Gala, because Gala is usually the sort of the most accessible program for a lot of people.
Yes
that might
and
be
no, but yeah.
But I think for a lot of people that are wanting to see films with big names, or that are more glossier, studio centric, or have a slickness to them.
Yeah.
We haven't seen anything on Royal Hotel, so maybe it is. But judging based on the filmmaker, even casting John Bonet, like her movies are a little bit more subversive when it comes to Kitty Green, when her movies come to how they approach topics people are familiar with.
You do have Cate Blanchett, who's in The New Boy,
which played Can.
Yeah, from the director of Sweet Country, which played Tiff. I thought the movie Emperor sounded a little bit interesting because it's a satire about movie industry pretension. The description says Andy Lau is perfectly cheekily cast as a movie star seeking relevance via a film festival baiting art house role, and director Ning Hao's sharp satire of movie industry pretension. So that sounded kind of interesting. Could go either way, right? With satire and stuff like that. But I always am interested in that kind of stuff. You have what else do we got here of people of note that we maybe wanted? There's a documentary about the National Ballet of Canada's 2022 production of Swan Lake,
which Neve Campbell is an executive producer on, which probably because she worked on one of Robert Altman's last films, The Company, with Malcolm McDowell. So maybe that's like her kind of connection there. Because when you have a name that's brought in later on as executive producer, it usually is just a figurehead for the most part.
Yeah. Kate Winslet in Lee, which is about the American photojournalist Lee Miller.
That's an interesting cast. Andy Samberg is in that movie.
I saw that, which made me 1,000% more interested.
Because it's not that he can't deliver. Like he has some really strong dramatic beats in Palm Springs, but it's a war photographer with Kate Blanchett in the lead, Andrew Riceborough coming off of an Oscar nomination, Alexander Skarsgård. It's a film that I believe has distribution in Canada with Elevation Pictures, but internationally doesn't as of yet. So that could be another movie that maybe is looked at as an awards potential for, or awards play for Kate Winslet, because Kate Winslet obviously is an actor of high regard and quality when it comes to the film choices she makes. And so people will be, again, it kind of falls into the gala aspect.
That's what I mean. Yeah. That's what I'm trying to call out for that kind of stuff. Finest Kind kind of falls into that gala thing too. You have Ben Foster, Toby Wallace, Tommy Lee Jones, and Jenna Ortega starring in a crime drama from Brian Helgeland about a crew of fishermen who tread dangerous waters, great writing, after their debts start piling up.
So that's a movie that's been in development for years, because Jake Gyllenhaal was going to be the lead in that with Zendaya for a long time. And that director has a really interesting career of both like because he basically co-adapted or wrote he adapted LA Confidential and then directed Payback with Mel Gibson. So, he's a guy that's kind of all over the place as a filmmaker. So that could also be another film that is looking for a more commercial route moving forward. And it's just interesting that that's a movie that has been in development now for at least, I think, 5 or 6 years.
Yeah. And then there's Naiad, which stars Annette Bening and Jodie Foster, about the true story of a woman who at 64 became the first person to swim from Cuba to the US without a shark cage.
Now that is getting some
directors
of Free Solo and The Cave. Yes. Well, also talking about the Thai cave rescue, like how soon do you make movies about that? And there's now, a narrative film by Ron Howard. There's the documentary, and I believe there's also a Netflix series. So there's a lot there. But that movie has been getting a little bit of controversy already, because there's somebody that is disputing that didn't actually happen, that she didn't actually swim from Cuba to the US. So we'll see how that goes. I mean, there's always discourse with at least one or two movies at every festival.
Even the Stallone movie is getting a little bit of kind of backlash as well. So, which is the closing night film. Okay. You want to move on from galas, and I assume next would be special presentations. This is going to be so difficult because we had some tech issues for me to keep track of time codes. When did we end? 37, and now we're 11 minutes in. That would make 48. Wow.
You're seeing how the sausage is made during this episode.
Yeah, what everyone wants to know. So let's move on to special presentations. This is a beefy one, so bear with me while I read all of the titles. A Difficult Year, American Fiction, Anatomy of a Fall, Close to You, Daddy-O, Days of Happiness, El Rapto, El Salvador de la Navidad, Evil Does Not Exist, Ezra, Fingernails, Four Daughters, His Three Daughters, Hitman, In Restless Dreams, the music of Paul Simon, Kidnapped, Knox Goes Away, La Chimera, Last Summer, Les Indesirables. I'm just going to say it like that. That's the most...
That's the Lodge Lee movie.
Yeah. The most Canadian pronunciation of that. Memory, Monster, Mother Couch, Next Goal Wins, North Star, One Life, Pain Hustlers, Poolman, Quiz Lady, Reptile, Rue, Rustin, Seven Veils, Shoshana, Sing Sing, The Beast, The Burial, The Convert, The Critic. I don't like when they do alphabetical order and put
And
all
then they
the
put
thes.
the for, yeah.
I hate that.
That's
Anyways,
awful.
The Critic, The Dead Don't Hurt, The Holdovers, The Movie Teller, The Peasants, The Promised Land, The Zone of Interests, interest singular. Together 99, Unicorns, Uproar, Wicked Little Letters, Wildcat, and Woman of the Hour. That was a lot of movies. And Eric, I will, you said with the galas that's usually the flashiest thing with the big movie stars. I always think special presentations takes that. And the galas is always an interesting mix of like, you know, it is international stuff. It does have usually one or two big flashy movies, or it does have like weird movies that either don't have distribution or just have movie stars in them that aren't very good sometimes. And like, and then the special presentations is usually where you see the big flashy movies or the ones with big movie stars personally, or big directors and things like that. The odd time one of those movies does slip into gala or something, but gala is always just a weird mix to me. And I don't necessarily think of that as that, you know, where all the, you know, big movie stars are and stuff. I usually see that in special presentations. I'll kick it back over to you right away. Anything, I'm sure there are multiple movies on the special presentation side of things that you're excited about.
Yeah, there's two in particular, and it's a Cannes Sandra Euler double bill of Anatomy of a Fall, which won the Palme d'Or at Cannes this year, and Jonathan Glazer's The Zone of Interest. And so with Anatomy of a Fall, it's basically a courtroom drama, and Sandra Euler from Tony Erdmann is the lead suspect on trial for the murder of her husband, I believe. I haven't read the synopsis of the plot, but that won the Palme d'Or this year at Cannes, and Neon picked it up. So Neon has won, I think, 3 or 4 Palme d'Ors in a row with Parasite, Triangle of Sadness, T10, and Anatomy of a Fall. And see, that's where I find that assessment, where I find the special presentations are more of a place of mixing things up, because Anatomy of a Fall is not a movie that has movie stars.
I just think the best movies are in special presentations. That's what I mean.
Well, I agree with that. I think there's a lot of, but there's a lot of good stuff in other programs.
I agree. No, I agree. But I mean,
but this is a nice mix of the flashier stuff, but also some international cinema that might also be crossover successes, where like Zone of Interest is, next to The Boy and the Heron, I think my most anticipated movie of this year in the last few years, because Jonathan Glazer is a director who takes his time on making a film. He's only made 4 movies at this point, with Sexy Beast, Birth, Under the Skin, and Zone of Interest. And his movies, you know, Under the Skin and Zone of Interest are both loosely based on novels. Martin Amos's book, The Zone of Interest, which the author actually passed away a couple days after the film played at Cannes, was sort of the loose inspiration for this story about a group of a Nazi family living an idyllic lifestyle, basically right next door to a concentration camp. And it doesn't sound, it's not supposed to be entertaining, but it does sound like a hard sell. But I think as a director, Jonathan Glazer is one of the best. Started out in commercials and music videos, and now has kind of made a name for himself in making very eclectic movies. This, like a lot of his productions, has been sort of discussed in terms of how long the production took to make. And you have, you know, rumors that he shot multiple versions of the same movie, but from different perspectives of the cast. And it's going to be fascinating to watch this movie. It's the same cinematographer who did Cold War and I'm Thinking of Ending Things. So that's going to be a film that I think will play very well with the crowd. That's an A24 movie in the US. Elevation has both of these films in Canada. And out of the special presentations, which there's other stuff that I'm looking forward to, I would say those are the two big ones.
Nice. For me, I'm going through again. I think I got to shout out Hitman by Richard Linklater. Reteaming with Glenn Powell from Everybody Wants Some. I love Glenn Powell. I'm surprised he's not a bigger movie star than he already is. Linklater, I am hit or miss on. You know this better than anyone, Eric. Love the guy. Sometimes I never want to say hate the guy, but like I'm just up and down with each movie that he does.
But when you love his work, you do really like his stuff.
So that's why, a comedy thriller that's about a hitman that like I'm all about this. So really looking forward to that. That would be up there in some of my most anticipated. I agree with you with I'm not a Glazer guy.
You're not glazing?
I haven't been glazed yet, but like I skipped out on God, you just mentioned it. What was
Under the Skin?
Under the Skin, which I remember vividly premiering at TIFF and you going to it, and I was like, I'm just gonna chill, and then like I just hung out until you were done. So like I am open to this. It does sound intense and I'm sure it'll be very, very interesting. So I will go check it out. As well as the, Anatomy of a Fall, I think sounds really interesting. And I always like to check out the Palme d'Or winner at TIFF. That usually plays TIFF at whatever.
Especially if it's being brought to you by Neon.
Yeah, exactly. So I am also excited for those. Going through again. Let's go through. Sorry, guys, you're seeing the sausage be made too. The Michael Keaton movie. I think we both kind of like.
Yeah.
Just because it's Michael Keaton. Has Michael Keaton directed?
Yeah, The Merry Gentleman with Kelly MacDonald and Bobby Cannavale, which it's fine, that movie. But
I'm just calling out the Hitman movies, basically.
Yeah. So the synopsis sounds a little bit generic in terms of what's it called?
Knox goes away. So I can read the synopsis. Michael Keaton directs and plays Knox, a hitman losing his memory, putting him in a race against time to help his estranged son, James Marsden, who is great in jury duty. So I will give James Marsden a shot now in anything he does moving forward, just because.
But he's a great comedic actor. Yes, when he does drama, it can be hit or miss.
There you go. That's a good point. So yeah, I mean, we both love Michael Keaton. So like, no matter what, I will always give a Keaton.
Even if it's Morbius, man, we'll give it a go. And The Flash.
Talking about, one of the bigger gets, even though I know the skies have been a little bit grating to both of us lately, is Taika Waititi's Next Goal Wins. A movie that's been kind of shelved for quite some time because they were trying to figure out what to do with it, as well as having to do some reshoots to replace an actor.
We'll just say it. He had to replace Armie Hammer with Will Arnett.
Yeah.
And that took some time, but also he was making movies back to back to back, basically. So.
He was, everywhere for a little while. And there was a time where I think Love and Thunder and Next Goal Wins were gonna come out pretty close to one another, and then Disney decided to hold Next Goal Wins. We're finally getting that movie. It's about the American Samoa soccer team and their attempt to win, or not win, but make the World Cup. And I like Fassbender, Waititi, again, a guy that was more hit than miss for me, but like lately, with his public persona, with kind of Thor, Love and Thunder not being super great, I can't say my excitement is like super high for this, and I think it does come out October, November.
No, I think it's November.
But I still will give it a shot, and I do like football or soccer, what we call it here, but so I'm excited to watch that. But I think he's a guy that we're both kind of softened on lately.
Yeah, he's too overexposed, and for an underdog story, that's not the direction you want to enter a movie with. You kind of want to win people over because nobody's really given you any credit, where even Jojo Rabbit, I don't think it's a bad movie, but I don't necessarily love that film. And when he won the Oscar for, for adapted screenplay, it just kind of felt like You know,
I like that movie. I think
it added fuel to the fire of his ego,
that.
you know, but that's most filmmakers in one way or another.
I'm glad he's slowing down a little bit, but I mean, we're getting this now.
But I mean, it was delayed. I don't know if it's necessarily him slowing down, if it was just like the studio being like, okay, well, we need to, you know, press pause on this thing and figure out the Army Hammer of it all, and then now we'll reshoot this.
To 47 things, but then I don't.
Yeah.
Any of them. Yeah.
So I guess it's good for the festival because you have somebody returning that had such a big film like Jojo Rabbit play previously, and he is a name. But there is that kind of burnout, I think, on him now that a lot of people, at least in the critic community and maybe sort of, you know, film lovers and things like that, maybe feeling a little bit more. But I think as like a potential crowd pleaser, it probably is a really good play on TIFF's part for them to release that.
And I think he is one of the more modern directors that, you know, maybe the average moviegoer would be able to know, just because he is so out there and in the
because of the Thor movies, right?
Yeah, I know. Yeah. So another one, I'll just throw things out, you know, by bigger, quote unquote, bigger films or bigger filmmakers. You know, David Yates directed a couple Harry Potter movies, so I'll shout out Pain Hustlers, because that's, and you know, it has Chris Evans, Emily Blunt, about, you know,
how dare you forget Andy Garcia's
in there, pharmaceutical
Tommy Bahama himself,
about the opioid epidemic. So I'm curious. I don't know. I will also shout out that this is the year of, I made a joke about this when they first got announced, of, I'd used the Nathan Fielder meme of TIFF trying to get stars to come to the festival. So they just programmed all the movies that they directed because they can come as directors and not stars. So you have things like Pool Man from Chris Pine. You have
the best Chris.
Yeah, you have I'm going through, there's more. Ethan Hawke has a movie. Viggo Mortensen, The Dead Don't Hurt. You have which one is the Ethan Hawke? Wildcat. You have Anna Kendrick having Woman of the Hours. So there's kind of a theme in special presentations of a bunch of actors turned director. I believe even in, is it Platform or Discovery, there's a film.
Patricia Arquette
has a
Gonzo
film as well. So that's kind of, every TIFF kind of sort of has themes, and one of the themes this year is kind of actors turned directors. So like,
how do we get the actors to be at our festival?
Yeah.
Let them direct their movies.
Yeah, will they be any good? It's really going to be a toss-up.
Will there be a ton of close-ups of actors in movies directed by actors? You bet your life.
Yeah, but like Pool Man sounds funny enough, and I like Chris Pine enough that I will give it a shot. Like, you know, Chris Pine makes his directorial debut with a kinetic noir comedy where he plays an anxious pool cleaner who uncovers a curious conspiracy in the city of Los Angeles. So I'll give it a shot. Could go either way, right?
Yeah.
With the Anna Kendrick movie, sounded kind of interesting because it was focusing on
like a game show, right? Like
a dating show game, and about a serial killer that went on the dating game. So that kind of sounded interesting. You know, Ethan Hawke directing his daughter Maya Hawke in Wildcat. You have Viggo Mortensen doing a period western. Which doesn't really vibe with me, but like, and I never watched Falling either.
It's not good, but he's good in it. And
Vicky Creeps I like too. So
and he's reteaming with Lance Hendrickson as well. So that could go either way. But but again, like, those are all these people that you're mentioning, I do like as actors.
Yes. Yeah.
As directors, I mean, some of them haven't been, you know, basically kind of given the spotlight yet. So who knows? Like, we could get you know, I'm not saying like he's a great director, but you know, we could get somebody on that level of like a Ben Affleck, where it surprises you that like, oh, they're maybe
Bradley Cooper.
Yeah, a Bradley Cooper type. We got, Toronto gets their own Bradley Cooper and
Chris
Pine. Chris Pine.
You never know, man. You never know. Going back, shout out some Canadian films. Chloe Robichaud has Days of Happiness.
Sarah Prefers to Run, if you haven't seen that, is really a very subtle, solid little character study.
Mm-hmm. So this looks like Canadian Tar. So
trapped in a car called Canadian Tar.
So I'm excited to check that out. You mentioned that they just added this Jeffrey Wright film, American Fiction.
Yep.
So that sounded kind of interesting. Daddy-O, we were talking a little bit before air,
Sean
which
Penn.
yeah, I know. So this could go either way. I like Dakota Johnson actually quite a bit. I like movies that are single location, just two actors talking.
Well, that's the Linklater thing, right?
Yeah.
Or going back to, the classic film school of it all, the Antonioni, style of two people, having a conversation, whether it's in a single location or just walking and talking.
Yeah. Well, this is driving and talking. So, I am curious about that one. I have no idea if it'll be any good. Kind of going through, Ryusuke Hamaguchi's film Evil Does Not Exist, the director of Drive My Car, which Eric, I know you really liked. So
yes, and Janus Films actually also picked this one up as well, and this was a movie that nobody knew was coming. That was made under the wire, basically.
Because you said he had a couple movies this year, didn't he?
Yeah, he has another film that I think is playing Venice as well. So we got one of them. We got one of them.
Fingernails that has Jesse Buckley, Riz Ahmed, and Jeremy Allen White, three actors I really, really like.
Shot in Toronto, and also Annie Murphy's in it, and it's from the director of Apple, which was something produced or executive produced by Cate Blanchett and Yorgos Lanthimos. So it has that his first movie. You did. You look disappointed in what I'm telling you about Fingernails.
I hate these tech issues. This makes my life a living hell. No, I'm excited to talk about TIFF, but it just...
This is the breakdown of our show already.
On the audio version, you're probably all like, Matt, we don't even give a shit about the video version, so who cares? But when we want to put this stuff up on YouTube, especially because if people will want there...
you're back. Yeah.
Great. Now this will just totally fuck up the video completely. But we'll figure it out. We'll just continue. We'll power through and hope for the best. Anyways, the audio people don't give a shit. But sorry, Eric, you were saying something.
Yeah, so Fingernails is from the director of Apples. I cannot pronounce his name, but that first
Christos
movie...
Nikou, maybe?
Yes, that's probably a
close.
Right. But Yorgos Lanthimos and Cate Blanchett were executive producers on this. Cate Blanchett, I think, is also an executive producer, on this. It was originally going to be a Carey Mulligan movie, and then scheduling conflicts came out, and so Jesse Buckley took over the role. It sounds a little high concept in terms of a Match Factory thing, and kind of figuring out or is the person you're with your actual soulmate, which was actually this episode of, I can't remember the name of the show, but it was a recent sci-fi series that had Kingsley Ben-Adir and Sarah Snook that sounded very similar to that. So we'll see. It's a good cast, an interesting up and coming director. Will it be very deadpan? Probably. Apple's which was about it was basically about a world where people were suffering from amnesia, and they were losing their memories, and so they have created these special departments where people can go and reinvent themselves, basically, or relocate themselves if their families don't come to claim them. And so you follow this one guy who is trying to figure out his new life because nobody came to pick him up or vouched for who he was. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see what he does with this.
Cool. His three daughters, only because of the titular three daughters of Carrie Coon, Elizabeth Olsen, and Natasha Lyonne. I kind of like that grouping of women. So, again, I'm not sure if...
that director also did The Lovers as well, with Tracy Letts and Deborah Winger. And he's kind of known... Azel Jacobs, I believe, is the name of the director. And so he's kind of known for... He's not... Because mumblecore doesn't really exist anymore, but lo-fi human dramedies are basically his kind of milieu. Cool.
But yeah, those three women. Lady Lies, Lay Indesirables.
Largely.
Yeah. Thank you. We both liked Les Miserables from 2019's TIFF. So maybe doing a thematic, kind of, I don't know, maybe I'm wrong, but it does seem like there's going to be some thematic sequel kind of playing with similar themes and stuff like that. So definitely intrigued by that as well. Coriata has another movie. Eric, are you excited for Monster?
Yeah, that played at Cannes and was picked up by Wellgo USA. And I wasn't the biggest fan of Broker last year. I know a lot of people really liked it, but it's not as good as something like Shoplifters or Afterlife or anything like that. But yeah, I'm still excited about it, and it's one of those movies that I think maybe would benefit from that second wave now of people catching up with it at another festival. Because when a movie doesn't play well at Cannes, that doesn't necessarily mean that the movie's bad, because there's a lot of films that play at Cannes that maybe don't get the reaction they would hope for on the international market, but then do better, in another country or, in North America. Like a lot of Wes Anderson stuff actually, even though it's primed for the French in a lot of ways,
it does better here.
It does better here. Like Moonrise Kingdom was that movie that when it played at Cannes, it got lukewarm reactions. But then when it played when it was released in North America through Focus Features, it was a huge success. And it was like a summer surprise in terms of its box office.
Yeah. Another theme I'm seeing going through these, a lot of siblings or with dealing with their parents kind of movies. You have Mother Couch, which is about
mother, couch.
It's on TIFF. It just says Mother Couch.
Oh, because in some places it's Mother, couch.
This just says Mother Couch with no comma. Maybe that's just a typo. You have Ewan McGregor, Taylor Russell, Ellen Burstyn, and F. Murray Abraham, and other people in that movie as well.
And a couch.
Yeah, the mom won't move from a couch in a furniture store, so maybe going to be more dramatic. The premise seems absurd, but in it could deal with some serious things there. But that, and then North Star as well, with Kristen Scott Thomas directing, Scarlett Johansson and Sienna Miller, about three sisters again coming together. So there's a theme, and even that other movie that I said that had sisters in the title as well. A lot of dealing with siblings, dealing with their parents and things like that.
Well, especially when you're getting people like the filmmakers, but even nowadays, like, generations of kids that have grown up that are having to focus on their parents' mortality in some way or another, right?
Yep. Quiz Lady from Jessica Yu has Awkwafina and Sandra Oh, as well as Will Ferrell and more. I always like when, comedies, high concept comedies, come play TIFF. So this is a Hulu film that's premiering in November. But again, I also, Jason Schwartzman in it as well. So sounds kind of interesting. Reptile with Benicio del Toro, Alicia Silverstone, Justin Timberlake. Could go either way. It had an interesting premise from the description. So I'm kind of want to see that as well. So I want to give that a shout out.
Yes, an excess baggage reunion between Del Toro and Silverstone.
Everyone's been waiting for. You have the Adam Agoyan movie, Seven Veils, which reteams him with
Amanda Seyfried from Chloe.
Yeah. Thank you, Eric. Sing Sing sounded interesting as well, which is a theater troupe finds escape from the realities of incarceration through the creativity of putting on a play in this film based on real life rehabilitation program and featuring the cast, which has
Coleman Domingo and Paul Racy's in there as well.
Yeah, so that sounded interesting. The Beast, which has shown up at a couple different festivals with Léa Seydoux and George McKay.
Yeah, the George McKay thing is scaring me a little bit because the last time we saw a McKay movie at TIFF, it didn't turn out very well.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, so I think that's, there's some other stuff there, but like, the Holdovers, the trailer, I really vibed with the style of that movie, with the grainy 70s style cinematography and the sound and kind of the voiceover in that trailer. So I am uh, curious about that. We have Mads Mikkelsen reteaming with the director of A Royal Affair for The Promised Land.
Will it be as happy as A Royal Affair? Probably.
Yeah, and I think that's pretty much covers special presentations. So a lot. That's their biggest program usually. That's usually, we cover the most films usually from special presentations, because those are the films that kind of will bring people in to listen. So again, when we're talking about these films and I'm reading the descriptions, I am like, we started off from a very kind of negative standpoint, but there is a lot of stuff there that I'm either curious about and want, or really do want to see. So and again, like maybe you go, okay, I'm gonna give this a shot, and then you go, holy crap, that was really, really good. Eric, from here, where do you want to go? Midnight, probably Midnight Madness.
Let's go to Midnight Madness and see what our friend Peter Kaplowski has programmed this year.
I got the TIFF Midnight Madness shirt on. Yeah, I love Peter. Peter's a great dude, great programmer. Always interested to see what he programs, because he always has an interesting mix of different genres, not just, you know, what you would typically think in a midnight program and stuff like that. So let's get into it. So for Midnight Madness, we are starting with Aggro Dr. 1/5. Aggro Drift by Harmony Korine. You have Boy Kills World. You have Dix the Musical. You have Hell of a Summer, Kill, Naga, Riddle of Fire, Sleep, When Evil Lurks, and Working Class Goes to Hell. So Eric, I mean, I'll kick it back over to you, but I think the one thing that we're most intrigued with is a new Harmony Korine movie.
Oh, you better believe it. Is it all shot in infrared? Yep.
Pack your Advil, or
oh man, I have to see this, because I remember the first time I saw one of his films at TIFF was Trash Humpers, and it was an experience unlike any other. It's such a weird movie to begin with, kind of playing on the found footage aspect of it, but people dressed up in old age makeup, disturbingly so, and kind of almost playing in a Jackass kind of mold a little bit as well. Watching that movie at the Elgin, and a pretty full theater, you know, for an early morning screening, and a lot of people maybe don't necessarily read on what the film is about per se. They just maybe get tickets through friends or family, or, you know, win a contest or know somebody that gives tickets out. So you had a lot of people there.
Yeah.
The lights went up after the movie was done, and about half of them were gone.
I'm really intrigued, because like for Midnight Madness, you get the crew that is ride or die Midnight Madness, and they go to every single one, right? And I think they even brought back the Midnight Madness package this year, which people were excited about. Then you get the people who go for the specific films or the specific filmmakers. So you'd think that most people know what they're getting into with a new Harmony Korine movie that's shot completely in infrared
with Travis Scott, and then also being just in Midnight Madness, because I don't know if Trash Humpers, maybe it was Midnight Madness, but it did feel weird when that movie played in kind of a more prestigious theater, and you know, you're watching something that probably should not play in a nicer sort of space, and that I think also subverts your expectations. And it was similar with Spring Breakers as well, because seeing that at the Hot Docs Theater, it was funny because that movie works as a bit of a Trojan horse. We've talked about Trojan horses recently with Barbie, but that movie worked as a Trojan horse in a way, because a lot of people that were lined up to see that film, and why it was so popular, is because of Selena Gomez fans who had no idea about Gummo or Julian Donkey Boy.
And you might have the same
Lonely.
thing with Travis Scott fans for this.
Yeah.
Be
like, what the fuck?
Like Travis Scott does like have a passionate fan base as well, right?
Yeah.
So
but there are people like our friend Andrew Feigl, who's both. You know, like he's both a Travis Scott fan and a Harmony Korine fan, and you know, that melding of two weirdos, weird worlds coming together is beautiful. But yeah, it's not everybody. So
And was it Travis Scott who recently just released that IMAX compilation film that had a bunch of
I think it was, and
directors?
and Harmony Korine was one of them, and I think it's
Yeah.
either Gaspar Noé or somebody
Gaspar
else.
Noé as well. Franchise, was it? Or no, this was in 2020. No, I thought it was.
I think it was this year. I thought
Was
it
it
was like
Travis Scott or was it someone else? IMAX Harmony Korine, because that's not.
that's and then Google's just like, no, you're on a watch list now.
Circus Masochists, starring Travis Scott. Yeah. So yeah, and it had so I mean, maybe his fans do know what that, like, Nicholas Winding Refn, Gaspar Noé, and Harmony Korine all directed, co-directed like aspects of the movie and like different segments. They're basically, I think they're mostly like music videos that are put together. So hey, maybe they do know what they're kind of getting into, and at least, like, I love that Travis Scott does stuff like that, and he's interested in all that kind of stuff. So I'm very intrigued. The infrared cinematography, I feel like, is going to be horrible, but like in the most Harmony Korine way. So
well, I want to laugh. Like, that's the thing that I love about Harmony Korine movies, is that his humor is so warped that it's hard not to, laugh at things that probably are so inappropriate. But like, you look at Beach Bum and you look at Spring Breakers and Gummo and Julian Donkey Boy, like there's sincerity in there, but it is also very funny, where he'll follow people that are mostly misfits. And I know one of Peter's hints for this film, which made me laugh even more, was Under Siege 2 Dark Territory with Steven Seagal, which is Steven Seagal's character, Casey Ryback, coming back from the first Under Siege movie from a boat onto a train. So I'm in.
Yeah, no, I love Midnight Madness every single year, and I always read the descriptions, and it's probably Peter writing them, and he does such a great job of convincing you to want to go see these movies. So like Boy Kills World, it stars Bill Skarsgård, and so here's the description. Bill Skarsgård commits bloody martial arts mayhem as a deaf warrior trained by a mysterious shaman played by the Raid's Yayan Ruhan, to topple a far-flung dystopia in Moritz Moore's loony debut feature. So like, that sounds fun or interesting.
It sounds a little bit like you're taking aspects of Zatoichi, the Blind Samurai, and also elements of G.I. Joe with Snake Eyes being trained by the blind master. Yeah.
So intrigued by that. Dix the Musical, which we have gotten a trailer for, got a very mixed reaction. I love musicals. I love a perverse riff on The Parent Trap. I like Larry Charles. I think who all the way back to, he directed some of Seinfeld and worked on Curb Your Enthusiasm and Borat and other things like that too.
Which also had a very big, infamous
TIFF
Midnight Madness
premiere. Yeah. So I am definitely intrigued by this. And what are the sewer bros? What are those little, what are they called? The little creatures in there?
Yeah, they kind of remind me. I don't know if you ever saw that horrible Dan Aykroyd movie, Nothing But Trouble.
No.
But there are these two like giant baby men. Like, look it up right now. Type in Nothing But Trouble and type in baby creatures. And they are the most disgusting and disturbing things you'll ever see, but they kind of look like that. And Nothing But Trouble now is best known for having Tupac in that film and the Digital Underground. So
cool.
Terrible movie, but fascinating to watch.
So yeah, Dix definitely sounds interesting. It could be very grating and not like I'm the trailer, it could go either way for me.
It kind of almost looks like it's trying to capitalize on why am I forgetting it? I'm sorry, I'm blanking on this. My mind's been everywhere this week, but the Mormon
Book of Mormon
a little bit. Like, it's almost trying to be a little bit like Trey Parker and Matt Stone.
It does kind of look
copy
like
that.
I don't disagree there. Book of Mormon is fantastic. They've talked about making that into a movie for a long time, but yeah, I don't know. It's definitely on my want to see.
It's got to be better than Dear Evan Hansen. Right.
Just as horrifying, though.
Could you imagine if they played that in Midnight Madness instead of Special Presentations or Gala? That actually might have worked.
Yeah, I know. You have Hell of a Summer. Sorry, I'm kind of going through everything, but a lot of these do sound interesting to me. This is directed by Finn Wolfhard and Billy Burke. Brick, sorry. Billy Burke is a different person. Billy Brick. Your classic summer camp slasher comedies. So I know Finn Wolfhard is a huge cinephile, and
they both are. They both had a podcast together, and they were both in Jesse Eisenberg's directorial debut, When You Finish Saving the World, in lead roles.
So that's great. So I'm glad he's getting a shot to direct something. Sounds fun. Your classic. I just played The Quarry for PS5, which is a kind of choose your own adventure video game. That's basically a bunch of teenagers at a summer camp, and it's more
Lance Hendrickson.
Yeah, it's more supernatural, and Ethan Suplee and David Arquette. So it's got like a lot of nods to different things, but ton of fun. I like that kind of classic summer camp kind of slasher movie. So that sounds interesting. Kill, another martial arts thriller. This is on a passenger train bound for New Delhi. A bloody battleground of brutal close quarters combat as a pair of commandos square off again. So again, Peter always knows, like, he has always these mix of like brutal martial arts movies with your classic horror films, with your very raunchy comedies, and like he's got a formula that he sticks to, but is open to kind of playing around with that. And you kind of get a mix of everything. You get anything else that stand out that we haven't
Riddle
talked
of
about?
Fire, I think could be intriguing. I know there's a teaser out there for it now, and it played in Cannes Fortnight. So the director's Fortnight, and it does seem a little bit whimsical, which is always hit or miss. But there is a quality of that, kids in peril, that late 80s thing that was very popular with something like The Gate with Stephen Dorff. So that could be something to keep an eye out for. And it's fascinating when you think Midnight Madness, because, part of going to one of these movies, it's almost like an adrenaline rush in itself, right? You're feeding off the crowd as much as you are the movie. And some of these films feel like more certain guarantees are going to be made with them when it comes to, how these movies play. But then other ones like Riddle of Fire kind of seems to be a little bit more low key and maybe paced a little bit slower, and maybe is a slow burn.
Which I'm glad Peter's not afraid to do that kind of stuff, right?
Oh, definitely. I mean, like, I think when Brawl in Cell Block 99 came out, like that timing of when, the because it played earlier, right? Because he wanted to hit midnight when when shit hit the fan in that movie.
Asleep when we saw the movie.
Oh yeah. but I like that as well, where like there was a strategy in playing it a little bit earlier because it was a longer movie as well. So yeah, there's not always going to be a Halloween or Predator or something like that, like a big flashy movie. And I know there's some films that people were disappointed didn't show up, but again, expect the unexpected, right? That's always the best way to look at a program specifically like this.
No Saw X, Peter.
Tobin Bell, not in Toronto.
But you have some more classic horror stuff with like Sleep and When Evil Lurks, and
which both have been picked up, by the way. So When Evil Lurks is IFC, and then Sleep is Magnolia Pictures and Mongrel Media in Canada.
And then Working Class Goes to Hell sounded interesting.
Because Saint Maud was one of those movies a few years ago that surprised a lot of people and was picked up by A24. So you could have something here with that, where that movie maybe is not on a lot of people's radars as of yet, but if it kind of like a British sort of social commentary satire of the working class dealing with something either supernatural or otherworldly might play to that kind of crowd.
Absolutely. All right, cool. Where do you want to go from here? We're gonna speed through some of the smaller ones later because we are gonna probably run kind of long. But everyone is expecting a long BP episode from this. We'll go to where we're still most interested. Do you want to go to docs, Eric? Do you want to go to platform? Do you want to go to?
Let's go to platform, because I feel like platform is a natural. They used to have Vanguard, and I think that's one of the most missed of the programs. And platform, to me, is the closest to that.
Or
now.
You at least usually get one or two movies that would have played Vanguard probably in platform, right? So.
And also can just be surprises, because you have someone like Barry Jenkins, who's a part of the jury this year on platform, and Moonlight was a film that made a lot of noise at TIFF when it played in that section. So you have movies like Jackie and Lady Macbeth and Sound of Metal that have played in past programs in platforms. So there could be something in here that, even talking about How to Blow Up a Pipeline, you could have something in this group that could be that movie this year.
Absolutely. Oh, I forgot to take a time code. Let me do that. Where the hell is my notes? I got to do more math. 53 plus 37. Let's carry the one. 53. Okay, well, I'll read them. The platform films: Dear Jossie, Dream Scenario, which we've talked about quite a bit already. Great Absence. I Told You So. Not a Word. Shame on Dry Land. Sisterhood. Spirit of Ecstasy. The King Tide. And the Rye Horn. Eric, anything there that we've talked about Dream Scenario, but anything else?
I believe is the Tarsem movie there?
Yes.
Yes. So that might be worth keeping an eye out on, because if you're a fan of The Cell or The Fall, Tarsem has a very distinct theatrical style where you have kind of the surreal entering the real world or vice versa. And he hasn't directed a movie since that film with Henry Cavill and Mickey Rourke, Immortals. So it'll be interesting to see him come back. And I know a lot of people are excited about that one specifically because of him being a director. And I think he worked actually as like second unit on The Curious Case of Benjamin Button. So he's always a guy that has a very unique style that's both music video-esque and then also playing within the confines of breaking reality. Like The Cell, you look at the idea of being in the mind of a serial killer, and then you look at The Fall, which is from the point of view of a soldier, telling a fairy tale to a child and how the child interprets this tale. And, that those movies are always very interesting and have a very playful quality to them. So that could be a movie that breaks out here.
Cool. Yeah, I'll mention Dream Scenario again. So this is the A24 movie starring Nicolas Cage from Christopher Borgli. Co-produced by Ari Aster. That's all I need to know. So I'm
Nick Cage in your dreams. I mean, like, that's what the synopsis is basically.
Yeah, he goes viral because people start seeing him in their dreams, right?
Yeah.
So
which actually sounds a lot like the idea of it, even though I don't know if it's necessarily a horror film, but John Carpenter's Prince of Darkness, like the Brotherhood of Sleep, where everybody collectively has a dream that has a broadcast or a signal that they share the same dream. And so like that kind of reminds me a little bit of like what this is. I don't know, again, if it's supposed to be necessarily horrific or if it's just kind of more
I'm sure there'll be
bridging the two
there.
between horror comedy. Because, if Nicolas Cage is in your dreams, it could be horrific or comedic.
Yeah, I'm sure it'll be a bit of both.
And his look is amazing too.
The rest of these I'm not like super familiar with. So I'm definitely going in kind of just kind of going off the descriptions, and nothing really has stood out. Is there anything else for you? But that's
not really. But that's something where, like, again, during the festival, you might hear something about one of these movies and be like, oh, okay, well, it wasn't on my list to begin with, but now I think it definitely could be. And I think that's always an exciting thing, because there is usually a film that
totally
we don't have on our radar that during the festival, that first public or P&I screening, that word of mouth builds. And that's always the exciting thing about a festival like this that is 2 weeks long, where it's like, oh, did you hear about this movie? I wasn't really expecting anything or didn't know anything about it, and it just kind of blew my mind, or I thought it was better than I was expecting it to be, and you should give it a shot. And then, you go to your schedule and you look at the second half of your festival and you're like, oh yeah, it's screening this time, so I can fit it in there. And that's kind of the fun, I think, of this festival, and also just I think something that we maybe take for granted a little bit as well is that it is a very communal experience. You get to see a lot of people that you otherwise don't see any other time of the year, that are, online personalities or people that you come across maybe virtually, but it's nice to talk to somebody for a few minutes here and there, or get a cup of coffee and the press headquarters and things like that. And to basically decompress after watching something for a little bit, and or write something or record something or find a place to record. Those things
That'll
are all
be interesting this year. We'll see.
Yeah.
All right, let's move on to Centerpiece. So we have, 100 Yards, A Happy Day, A Ravaging Wind, A Road to a Village, About Dry Glasses, Benel and Adama, Chuck Chuck Baby, City of Wind, Close Your Eyes, Death of a Whistleblower, Fallen Leaves, Fitting In, Green Border, Hey Victor, Holiday, Humanist Vampire Seeking Consenting Suicidal Person, I Do Not Come to You by Chance, In Flames, Ishala a Boy, Irina's Vow, Javida, Carnival, Limbo, Lost Ladies, Mountains, National Anthem, Perfect Days, Robot Dreams, Shadow of Fire, Shada, Sira, Snow Leopard, Sweet Dreams, The Breaking Ice, The Delinquents, The Feeling That the Time for Doing Something Has Passed, The Monk and the Gun, The Nature of Love, The Reeds, The Settlers, The Teacher's Lounge, They Shot the Piano Player, Toll, Upon Open Sky, We Grown Now, Woodland, Your Mother's Son. Whew, another.
It sounds like you're just making up things as you're just like random words.
Nope, those are all things. So, a big lineup, and Centerpieces is what they used to call contemporary world cinema. So they've changed this to Centerpiece, which I think is interesting. Centerpiece being a classic term used by film festivals, but usually, how we talked about New York, usually you have a centerpiece film, right? Like one film. And now TIFF is calling, and maybe that's to our discussion earlier, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. Maybe they're sort of trying to discover what the festival is, or rebranding themselves, but like, especially calling this Centerpiece, and maybe wanting to make their festival truly, the international film festival. But I don't know. That's maybe me just speculating. Anything from here, Eric, that really stands out to you?
Yeah, there's a few things. There's the Turkish film, All the Dry Glasses, which played at Cannes and was picked up by Janus Films and Criterion. I really like this director quite a bit. He's done work like Climates and Once Upon a Time in Anatolia and The Wild Pear Tree. His movies are over 3 hours, but they tend to build in a very profound manner. By the time they get to the end, they really hit you quite hard. And usually they're surrounded by very prickly protagonists and sort of situations that don't necessarily have the most enticing description, or situations that are very hard to stomach. Once Upon a Time in Anatolia, it particularly deals with the procedural of finding a dead body that's been buried, and one of the suspects who's in custody kind of, taking them to the location, and the police kind of investigating the situation and looking at small town or small village life, and how depressing it is. And also, the why somebody does something so horrific. And it actually would make a great double bill with something like Zodiac in a way, or even, Memories of Murder, where you have something that's so unspeakable, but yet the mundanity of exploring why somebody will do something will leave you with more questions than answers. And he's definitely one of those. I can't pronounce his name to save my life, but he's one of those directors that I really do love his work and everything I've seen. Winter Sleep is another one as well that is fantastic, but not for everybody. It's very slow, methodically paced, and oftentimes you do feel the length. So if you're starting at 9 a.m. in the morning and you're seeing a movie that is very contemplative, that's 3 hours long, that might not be your cup of tea. And usually I see his stuff after the festival anyways at the Lightbox. So.
Right. Cool. Anything else?
There's some Sony Pictures Classic stuff. The Teacher's Lounge, which played Berlin, Shida, which has the lead from Holy Spider. I believe that played at Sundance virtually. So you have some, early winter festival films coming back again to maybe contend in the international categories for awards this year. There's Robots, which I think you kind of were interested in.
Robot Dreams. Yeah. I mean,
Dreams.
I've heard, I think it's completely silent, but it's an animated dialogue-free story about the miracle of true friendship between a dog and a robot. So, I mean, sounds great.
What could go wrong in the 80s in New York in the 80s?
Yeah, New York in the 80s. That is the added kind of cherry on top that made me go, okay, that's cool. I'm interested. And I like checking out animated films when they play TIFF and stuff like that too. So that sounded interesting. Are you a Wim Wenders guy or no?
Wim Wenders? Yes. I do like Wim Wenders quite a bit. There was a period there from the 70s to the late 80s where his work was unmatched. You have his Road trilogy, but then the two films that I love so much of his are The American Friend, which is a very loose adaptation of Patricia Highsmith's novels based around Tom Ripley. A lot of people remember Matt Damon playing him in The Talented Mr. Ripley, and then John Malkovich played him in Ripley's Game and the Alain Delon movie Purple Noon. So Dennis Hopper plays Ripley in that movie, and my brother Kyle and I, we just have this obsession with the style. Oh, and Paris, Texas, the other Wim Wenders movie that I truly love as well. Like so Paris, Texas, The American Friend, and Wings of Desire, those three movies in the late 70s and into the 80s, are phenomenal. A lot of people will probably know Wings of Desire better as the American remake with Nicolas Cage, City of Angels, than they will the Bruno Ganz movie, but all of those movies are incredible. After that, though, he kind of fell into a bit of a rut, and a lot of his stuff that he's made in the last decade or so, even Pina, the performance art dance 3D film, was not my cup of tea. I didn't hate it or anything. It didn't do anything for me. But even something like Submerged with Alicia Vikander and James McAvoy, it kind of felt a little bit off tonally and almost like it didn't. It was almost laughable with the dialogue. But I've heard Perfect Days is a kind of return to form for him, and it was picked up again by Neon at Cannes. So,
nice.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, I'm mostly going by your lead here, because you will pick out some good stuff. I went through and some stuff sounds interesting, but
there's another animated movie as well that Sony Pictures Classics picked up, the piano player.
Yeah.
One which sounds kind of interesting as well. And I like the idea that Robot Dreams and that are two animated movies that are playing not in an animated section or not a section that's designated for kids. And I think that's going into where we are now in the last couple of years, specifically with Guillermo del Toro talking about animation, not as a genre, but as a medium, and seeing that these kind of, and I think TIFF has always approached it that way, but it is nice to
like when they programmed Illumination Sing, right? Like,
sure. but Anomalisa, Persepolis, movies like that, where, they are playing them in programs that aren't simply just, designated for that. And it's the one category or the one program that it's kind of a shame that it is, but I also understand it still, is documentaries, where documentaries are the same thing. It's a medium in which you're telling a story. It's not necessarily just a genre. You know, a sports documentary isn't the same as a true crime documentary or a character study, you know. Like you look at last year, with All the Beauty and the Bloodshed, like that could have been a movie that played in special presentations or in, you know, the Gala or Centerpiece or anything. It didn't have to necessarily play in documentaries, you know, and that's the one thing that I still think we have even more of a hurdle to get over, because that is also, you know, its own category in itself.
Well, Eric, what a segue, because let's go into the TIFF Docs program, where we have Boil Alert, Bye Bye Tiberias, Copa 71, Defiant, Flipside, God is a Woman, Homecoming, I Am Sarat, In the Rear View, Menus, Placiris Le Trois. Sorry,
Alex Reno's just like,
I know.
listen to this.
Hey,
and be like,
I've been good this year. I'm trying to
have.
not like, you know, we'd get really long if I was reading every filmmaker's name and everything like that. But I'm trying my best here. Mountain Queen, The Summits of Laka Sherpa, Mr. Dress Up, The Magic of Make Believe, Silver Dollar Road, Songs of Earth, Sorry Not Sorry, Stamped from the Beginning, Summer Camp with a Q, The Contestant, The Mother of All Lies, The Pigeon Tunnel, The World is Family, Viva Varda, and Walls. Eric, you're the doc guy again, so I'm gonna punt this over to you. Anything, you know, that stands out?
The only film that I know a name is Earl Morris with the Pigeon Tunnel, and that's an Apple TV Plus release. And Earl Morris is a documentarian who kind of redefined the medium, you know, talking about, you know, doing the recreations that are very commonplace now, but when The Thin Blue Line came out, was something novel and changed the way that people.
Did you do that on purpose?
A little bit, but it's true. I think that, you know, it changed the way that we look at how a documentary is seen, you know. And his character, like if he's focusing on an individual, it can be, again, hit or miss. I think something like The Fog of War is a really well-made movie, but it's not as good as some of his character stuff, you know, like Gates of Heaven, or as I mentioned, The Thin Blue Line, where it's almost a procedural or based on people that are kind of weird or idiosyncratic, or, you know, or Vernon, Florida. Like those are movies that to me are his strongest, where he's playing within communities or within institutions that have wrongly accused people, Standard Operating Procedure being another one, in Guantanamo and like that. But when he does something that's based on even, you know, like The Unknown Known, which I know you have a very special place in your heart for, Donald Rumsfeld.
Yeah.
But he is such an important filmmaker within the community that, you know, when you see his name on something, it still means a great deal. And his obsession, his OCD, and his obsession with the fine details of certain things, I think really, because he used to be a detective as well, is always worth watching one of his movies or one of his series, because he'll always fixate on something you're not expecting to. And that little thing is what makes him very interesting, is that it's like, oh, this milkshake falling this way, and let's focus on that 4 times, but see it at different angles. And what does that mean? And does that mean anything?
Yeah.
Those are the films or filmmakers I love the most, that really are eccentric and kind of bring their own personality without necessarily interfering with
making
the story.
them the subject. Yeah.
Basically. As much as I love Werner Herzog, you know, his personality does help some of the stuff that he's made in the last little bit, because it's so dry that when you have his sort of eccentric personality coming through, it almost helps. But it does also, interfere with what is being depicted on the screen because you're so drawn to someone like him. And I mean, Earl Morris and Werner Herzog have had clashes before when Gates of Heaven came out, because Werner Herzog thought that movie would never get made, to the point where Werner Herzog ate his own shoe because he bet Earl Morris that movie could not get made, and it did, and did very well. And so he kind of took the spotlight away from that movie, because there was this short of him literally boiling his leather shoe and eating it on camera.
There we go. I do remember this vaguely.
Yeah.
I'll give a shout out to the Mr. Dress Up documentary.
Some CanCon.
Yeah, I mean, both of us, I think, grew up with Mr. Dress Up. Any Americans listening, you might not know who Mr. Dress Up is. I don't think there was any, like, it was purely Canadian, right? Like, I don't.
Yeah, but it was our version of Mr. Rogers.
Yeah, basically the same thing almost. So curious about that. Also, there was one other thing I wanted to shout out. Oh, the Agnes Varda doc. So there's some interesting stuff there as well. And we're going to talk Discovery now. So here's the Discovery program. A Match, Achilles, After the Fire, An Endless Sunday, Andragogy, Arthur and Diana, Backspot, Flybread Facin' Me, Gonzo Girl, Hajun, How to Have Sex, I Don't Know Who You Are, La Suprema, Mandoob, Mimang, Seagrass, Solitude, What We See, The Queen of My Dreams, The Teacher, The Tundra Within Me, Valentina or the Serenity, Window Cliquot, Wild Woman, Without Air, Yellow Buzz, and that's it. What are you laughing at, man?
I'm not laughing at the titles. I'm laughing at Matt's very Anglo-Saxon pronunciation of these movies.
Yeah. All right. What are you excited for in Discovery? Anything? I know these movies are usually, I mean, the program says it all. It is Discovery. They're from either first-time filmmakers or directors that are, up and coming and things like that, like the future of cinema or of TIFF or of filmmaking.
Yeah, Gonzo Girl is probably the biggest name, just in terms of director profile, being Patricia Arquette helming this movie, and then having people like Willem Dafoe in the film. So I can see a lot of people just looking at that and wanting to get a ticket for it because it has named stars in it. But Discovery is the section that After Sun, or was that Centrepiece or
After Sun played in?
It was one of the two.
Yeah, it might have been Discovery.
The other one that I think is worth talking about is, well, they're all worth talking about, but the one that I kind of know something that I can talk about is How to Talk About Sex, Matt. It's a film that played at Sundance and was picked up by Mubi. And I know that the director, Molly Walker, has a very tongue-in-cheek kind of attitude. Somebody asked the director what their inspiration or their favorite movies were for How to Talk About Sex, and the response was The Lion King. I was like, okay, I'm already sold.
I'm in on that.
Yeah. So yeah, I think Discovery is another perfect example of word of mouth. When something plays at the festival, or if it screens before the fest and people start talking about it, keep an eye out for some of these movies, or an ear on like what is the movie that's maybe going to break out. And this could be a chance for a filmmaker here to kind of take that next step in Discovery. And so, yeah, there's a lot of stuff there that I'm not familiar with, but we've been saying this again and again. That's not a bad thing. This is an opportunity to be surprised by something. And that is always one of the most exciting aspects of any film festival, especially when you're this late in the year, where you kind of feel like you already know everything that's coming out, or you want to see, like those surprises are just as rewarding, or even more so than, the films you're most anticipating.
Yep. I agree with you on Gonzo Girl. That's amazing about How to Have Sex. So you said it played Sundance?
No,
And-
pardon me.
sorry.
Can.
Oh, okay. I thought you said Sundance. You might have said Sundance.
I might have
So,
said Sundance. Sorry,
um,
I am literally recovering not from a cold, but from allergies. I am not meant for the outdoors, so my brain's been a little loopy the last.
No, that's
couple of
cool.
days.
No, I'm definitely the way that you just described it. I'm definitely in. So, I want to say Mimang is one of them that sounds like the Before trilogy. So I was kind of intrigued
Daddy-O
by
and
that.
Miming.
Yeah. So Kim Tae-yang's feature debut, shot over 4 years, follows a man and a woman who meet by chance and stroll through Seoul's changing streets. So I love just two people walking and talking.
But you weren't the
kind of
biggest
movie.
fan of Boyhood, which did take a
Yeah, but
long
that's
period of
not
time
like,
to
yeah,
shoot.
that's different. I think Boyhood, I don't need to get into it again, but relied
Let's get into it.
lot on its narrative structure as its gimmick.
As a gimmick, yeah.
Where I didn't feel the storytelling was, that, deserving of praise. I found it very simple and very, generic, but I thought a lot of people focused on the technical side of things, which is not a bad thing, but more so just relied on that gimmick way too
Instead of
much.
looking at the
Like,
story itself.
Yeah.
And
that was my personal
discussing
opinion,
that.
where I felt like the story was so fine. I grew up and I related to a lot of it, and but I just felt it very simple and kind of, other than its gimmick, there
conventional
wasn't much there.
narrative
Yeah,
coming
yeah.
of age story.
But
yeah.
this, I like, shot over 4 years doesn't bother me as much, because I don't think that's like the whole thing about the movie. I don't think it's going to be like shot over 4 years isn't going to be like the mark.
Well, I mean, it does say though in the
I
description.
know,
doesn't it?
of course, but like that's just a programmer putting that in there as like a thing, but I don't think that it's going to rely on that really. And people don't change that much over 4 years, at least. Like, yeah, maybe your look does a little bit, but like in your personality, but you can do that in different ways as well. But I don't know. I just
what movie do you think is going to end up on a McDonald's bag in the future?
Man, we'll talk about that on a future episode. So that's for another, normal episode of this
because
show.
Weathering with You did play at TIFF, and it was
which
not on
surprisingly
the
in that
bag.
campaign, not
No.
in that campaign at all.
What's the
Which
deal?
I'm like,
McDonald's?
What do they have Weathering with You? Come on, like that deserved to be there.
It's a beautiful Big Mac.
It was a beautiful Big Mac. That's a tangent that I will talk about if we just do some.
Did you
random
keep the
normal
bag?
Show. No, but I mean, if I go
Okay.
back and get,
Because I kind of
might
want
just,
you to
like,
get it back, because I'm going to be talking about Asian cinema with Andrew Feigl. I know this is off topic, but
Yeah.
I just want to, because I've never seen
He was
Akira
trying to get
Akira Kurosawa, Wong Kar-wai on a McDonald's bag.
I know, that's why I thought it was so funny. Nevis and I randomly went to McDonald's after we got drinks. We had like a random date night on Saturday where we should I put a time code in for this?
Just a quick excursion, McDonald's talk.
I really should. Like, no, this is a little bonus if you stuck around this long for the TIFF thing, where you're like, I just talk about TIFF. We went to Taste of the Danforth, which was underwhelming.
That's a shame.
It's fine. I don't know. Like, it just, a friend of my sister's best friend, Danielle, I don't know who to give credit to on this, if it was one of her friends or something. We were telling them like, it wasn't great. The vibes were kind of not, it's a lot of people waiting in long lines to eat at restaurant. I'm all for supporting local businesses and local restaurants and stuff like that. So whatever gives them more business, great. But to me, I just go like, Toronto just loves waiting in lines for things, where I'm like, all the things they're doing is you're getting food from restaurants you could go to anytime and not wait in line and just buy food for the same prices. So it just felt like there wasn't enough like music or other things to do that made it really interesting. And someone said to Danielle, my sister's friend, being like, Taste of the Danforth has the crowds of Pride, like the Pride weekend, but the vibes of Dufferin Mall. And I'm like, that's exactly it. So anyways, after that, we went for a walk. We got cocktails. And then I was feeling a little tipsy, and we were going to go walk over to meet up with my sister and my sister's best friend, who's basically my sister. So my two sisters. So we were like, okay, we're trying to do this thing where if we go out for dinner now, we don't buy cocktails because it's they're so fucking expensive. It's like $20 a cocktail in Toronto anywhere you go.
And are they always good, or is there an inconsistency there where
they're always, if you're at a good restaurant, the cocktails are good. Are they $20 good? Rarely. I mean, they're good, but I don't think any cocktail should cost $20. I don't know.
All this to say, McDonald's is now introducing cocktails.
No. So there's a way that we go about things. So it's like, go out for dinner, we don't get cocktails. So if we go out for cocktails, we say, let's get cheap dinner. That way it kind of like, everything's perfectly balanced.
Yeah.
So we go for cocktails and we're like, all right, I'm just going to grab McDonald's on the way to Sarah and Danielle. So we stopped in and then, got it was a day before, 2 days before they were launching this campaign, but I got a sneak peek at the Wong Kar-wai McDonald's bags. So I got nothing else from this thing. And like the whole thing is, I don't know, there's the bag and like
the Loki sauce,
which is just sweet and sour sauce, but says as seen on Loki. And then they're doing a couple other things, and we might talk about it more on the next. Maybe we get some McDonald's on the next episode, and maybe we record in a McDonald's. That'd be funny. Just
where cinema takes place.
Yeah, so I think that would be hilarious. So maybe that's what we do on the next episode. But anyways, tangent back to Discovery.
Make sure to mark this time wise.
No, I didn't. So everyone's just who's coming to learn about Discovery just gets to talk about McDonald's. But yeah, I think I'm down to just kind of randomly pick a couple of these that sound interesting and kind of jump into them. But I haven't done enough research yet, but I like the kind of things that you were saying. So let's quickly run through the last couple. Do you want to do these last couple as one, or should we just keep going and doing them separately? What do we have left?
Well, we have Primetime, Wavelengths, Shorts.
I'm sorry, Shorts, you're getting cut for length. Sorry.
Ouch. Not even just them being short is enough.
You're getting cut for length. I'm sorry.
My brother Kyle's listening to this, and he's just like,
I'm sorry.
Assholes.
I'm sorry. Like, if your brother Kyle had a movie at TIFF, we'd cover it. But
that's harsh.
All right, let's fucking go through it. What are we going through?
Just go quickly through it. Just
we're not doing industry conference or in conversation with. Those aren't movies, so we're not doing those. Doc conference, sorry, we're not doing. We'll go into, what is Luminaries?
I think that's also Conversations, isn't it?
Luminaries, art house filmmakers, a designated subsection of films within Centrepiece, Wavelengths, and TIFF Docs. Oh, so these just get like a Luminaries stamp on them. So we've already talked about those. So let's go to Primetime. So these are the movies that are playing, TV shows that are playing TIFF. We have Alice and Jack, All the Light We Cannot See, Bad Boy, Bargain, Black Life, Untold Stories, Bria Mack Gets a Life, Estonia, Expats, and Telling Our Story. Eric, we're not ones to usually go to the Primetime program. We did break that to go see a couple episodes of the Black Mirror
in IMAX.
No, we didn't.
It wasn't IMAX?
No,
or was it just the Justin Timberlake doc?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. But anyways, anything here? I mean, Lulu Wang's got a movie.
Lulu Wang, yeah.
Sorry, my bad. Thank you.
Yeah, that's the only one that stands out to me. And I'm going to say something controversial here. I think TIFF kind of should scrap Primetime. I think it was an interesting experiment when you had that conversation about, film being, or television being like film and film becoming more like television. And while there is still very much certain elements that are catering to that, I think the time for it is over, because the shows that they're programming, I don't think there's enough interest there. I would be very curious to see how many people actually attend all of these screenings, or like what is the maximum of like the most popular one. Like the Expats will probably be that in this case, because you have the director of The Farewell working with Nicole Kidman, and that's a big deal, and obviously but you're thinking to yourself as well, like, I'd rather just see a new movie by Lulu Wang than a series. And that's even outside of the context of the festival. And that's how I feel in general. Like, even with somebody like we just talked about a little while ago, we didn't really mention it, but like Nicholas Winding Refn, he's done 2 series in the last little bit. Haven't watched either one. and it would still be more than down to see what he does next as a feature. But that's just how it is, because we're not necessarily TV guys first and foremost.
I've watched a lot more TV lately. Like my wife likes TV even more than movies. So like I watch a lot of television with Nevis, but I've missed on shows that are directed by filmmakers that we like. So I kind of agree with that, where I always find TV, I like passive viewing. Like I do like The Bear is incredible. And I know I'm not the first person to say that. Everyone's saying that, but like it's really genuinely probably, like, if I put it in with my favorite things of the year, it would be up there. That, like, if you didn't count TV and movies as different things, it might be the best thing that I've watched this year. Right. So I do feel like that line is blurred, but I agree with you that this program always kind of just finds a way of happening, and no one really ever talks about it personally, but maybe the people in those TV circles talk about it more. But you have like Sean Levy having something here with All the Light We Cannot See, and Stephen Knight, being a Netflix show, I think, that has Mark Ruffalo and Hugh Laurie, based on a Pulitzer Prize winning novel. So you have some, like, and you already mentioned the Lulu Wang thing, but with Nicole Kidman and big names. So I get why they're doing it, or keep doing it. But I don't know.
And you're not getting the full show. I think we should also make that very clear.
I think that's my biggest problem, right? Is you're usually only getting an episode or two, which means for me, it's hard to review. We're going to be reviewing things like Ahsoka, and we do the Marvel shows and stuff like that, where we're only reviewing a couple episodes, but it's usually just giving our first impressions. But I think in a festival that's so crowded, it's hard for me to go, okay, I need to squeeze in time to watch 2 episodes of a TV show in the middle of the festival, when I can't even fit in every movie I want to see. Right. So like, that's, I think, my biggest issue. So, and I think maybe some people don't even realize it's TV when they probably get tickets to it and stuff like that.
Well, it does say prime time, and I'm sure there is the description, but people don't read things. And that's the other problem, where there are some instances where if it's like a TV movie or a mini series, you sometimes get an edited version for theatrical release. The one I'm thinking about is the Sean Durkin series, Southcliff, which played the festival, and it was kind of a mini series about a small town shooting and sort of the fallout of that. And it was one of the few times where I really felt like, oh, this was something special to watch it on a big screen. And I really liked the Black Mirror episodes that we watched. They were great.
Because those anthology series, I feel like, are kind of great.
Well, they're one and done, right?
Yeah. Even if you're seeing 2 episodes, you're getting 2 little mini movies, right? When you're getting 2 episodes of a larger story, it's hard to really, like, I guess to me that feels like more marketing than anything in here. But it is what it is.
Give me some episodes of Chopped.
Master Chef, here you go.
Or Vanderpump Rules.
Yeah. Oh my God, could you imagine?
In IMAX.
Oh yes, that's what we need. If I was a TIFF programmer, that's the kind of
I guarantee that would actually do very well if they program that.
Are you kidding me? Like, if you have the whole cast show up to a premiere, that's gonna go gaga, man. All right, let's go to wavelengths next. Just adding another time code, and then we'll finish off with shortcuts. All right, wavelengths. We have: do not expect too much from the end of the world. He thought he died, preceded by labyrinth sequences. Here, inside the yellow cocoon shell, Mademoiselle Canopsia, Mambar Perret, music, nowhere near, Orlando, my political biography, pictures of ghosts, the Human Surge 3, Wavelengths 1, quiet as it's kept, Wavelengths 2, sundown. I believe those are shorts grouped together, right? Programs. Wavelengths 3, outlines with Ackerman, Costa, and Godard. Youth Spring. That is your wavelengths program. I'm not a wavelengths guy, although here's the thing. I feel like wavelength movies, like, if someone forces me to watch them, like, I usually not usually, but sometimes or often go, oh, that was really interesting, or I did kind of find something to enjoy in that. It's hard for me to like, seek it out, but I know there are people who really, really fucking love this program.
It's the most experimental
Yeah.
and esoteric in a lot of ways, and it's just fascinating that this year, maybe just because it was too short notice, but Michael Snow passed away, and his short documentary Wavelengths is kind of like what the festival or what that program kind of based it on. And so there's nothing there in terms of paying tribute to him and that work that kind of set a tone for that program. But there is a couple things in this section this year that I've only been maybe once or twice, and that's partly just because I'm like that. Where when you're at a festival, I think your patience does begin to dwindle, and it's not necessarily the fault of the wavelength films, but they're less enticing because you have a shorter rope at that point. In if you're seeing something that is a little bit more demanding of you, to put the puzzle pieces together. But the last time I was at a wavelength screening was and it was because it was Viggo Mortensen was in it, was Hauha. And so that was the last time, I think, and the only time I've ever been. But there are a couple movies here that outside of the festival I would like to see at some point, which are Don't Expect Too Much from the End of the World, which does sound very funny and absurd, and has been described almost as like watching a nearly 3-hour kind of like meme-centric storyline. And then Inside the Yellow Coconut Shell, is it called? Or Cocoon.
Cocoon. Inside the Yellow Cocoon Shell.
Yeah, that's another one that played in Cannes, I think in the director's fortnight, that was picked up by Kino. That everything I've seen on it from the production stills looks really beautiful. And I do really like some filmmakers that are kind of outside of the box. But I think it's the mindset, if you're in that mood for something like that, and it's not a 3 or 4 picture day and you're watching, one movie after another, I think you can be more open to it. But if you're watching stuff for work, or if you're seeing multiple movies,
have to record stuff in between, yeah.
It is a harder sell. I mean, if you're just covering wavelengths, or if you really love that program, then absolutely. And I don't have anything against it, because I even like some of the movies that are playing this year and have in the past, but it's just, it is a tougher sell. But I'm also happy that it's there, because I think you need this program.
I agree. That's why, I mean, we didn't really cover it when we kicked it off, but one reason why I love TIFF is because it is so eclectic when it comes to its programming. Like, I do really feel like it does have something for every type of movie lover. Like, whether you like the big flashy movies, whether you like the strange art house movies, whether you like the A24 style, blockbuster indie movie, whether you like the horror side of things, whether you like I feel like it does have documentaries. Like, it does put a lot in each one of those sections, and it does have a little bit of something for everyone. So we'll move on to finish things off there, and we'll give a couple of shout outs for some of the different categories that the subcategories that they have, but we'll finish things off with shortcuts. And here's the thing, it actually only lists them as shortcuts program 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. So
done.
There you go. So
but again, it's we hate not being more enthusiastic for it or not including it. There's a lot of people that we know, including my brother Kyle, that buys packages for the short programs. And it's also where you'll discover new generations of filmmakers that are playing with the medium and getting ready to make that next step into feature filmmaking. So there's a lot there to appreciate. It's just, again, it's its own world, right? Like, shorts are a different beast altogether.
And I think that's kind of going back to my point right before this, that there's a little bit for everyone, right? There are the people who really like the shorts programs, and we'll go to those, right? And I just think for me, and the type of I like short films. I have nothing against them. you know, if anything, you know, the shorter the better sometimes. um I like the in and out nature of them, the creativity. I like the discovery in those kind of things of how certain short films get either made into features later, or you find certain directors, or even certain directors going back and doing a short later in their career and stuff like that too. So I'm all for it. And I absolutely so happy that it's there and that they continue to put a spotlight on those short programs, because I do every year know people who go to them and enjoy them. It's just like, for us, especially covering them, unless it's like someone really well known, um, or a filmmaker or something like that. Like, there are the odd times that we do cover a short film. Usually if it's like a PR person reaches out and goes, "Hey, I think you guys would vibe with this. Why don't you check it out? Here's a screener," or something. It's just like, again, when there's the scheduling being today, the schedule came out, like, to fit in, like, because there are 5 short films or something, it's usually an hour and a half, 2 hours that you're in there or longer. Um, I just usually it's where I kind of have to go, I can't squeeze this stuff in, and because it's just not my beat, if that makes sense, if you're talking in journalistic terms. So happy about the short programs, just not necessarily something that we cover here. Whoo, okay. Not our beat, Eric, but this was our beat, which is TIFF.
And the beat goes on.
A couple technical snafus, but we made it through a nice beefy 2.5 hours. Also, if you guys want to see more, go to the TIFF website as I shake my whole computer. They have some more subcategories, so you can kind of find this TIFF Next Wave selects, like, which is their you know, the Next Wave committee, which is their students and younger people, that which movies that they put their stamp of approval on. And then you can even get into some of the genre and subcategories, like films directed by women and LGBTQ plus movies, and experimental avant-garde movies. And they have all these like interesting First Nations films. Like, you can kind of go in and get really granular in your sub genres if you kind of want to find something specific, or if there is a certain subgenre that you're looking for, you like, that Eric and I necessarily didn't cover or glanced over and things like that. So I highly suggest going over to the TIFF website and playing with their filters when you look through the whole program, because there is a lot of ways you can kind of find and discover films to put on your program, that you're not necessarily just going to get from us, who tried to cover as much as possible, but it's hard for us to even know about every movie. We're still going to cover like the biggest stuff. All right, man. And then now we build our schedules. What those will look like, I'm sure they'll be revised 45 times before the festival. I've already kind of done a brief, kind of quick run through, but I'm sure it'll change even more. So I'm excited to plan it, and I'm excited for it. So even though we started from this place of going like, yeah, maybe it's a little bit of an off year, or a year that I'm like not, it's taking a little bit more energy to muster up the excitement. Like, I am still very excited. I love doing TIFF. I love covering it with you. Our friend Mike's going to come and take some photos for us as well. I really do. It's my favorite thing of the year. Like, my year for the last 15 years, or however long I've been going, is really revolves around the beginning of September for TIFF. Like, it begins and ends with TIFF. So like, I'm still super psyched. There are a ton of movies we just talked about that I am very excited about. And yes, am I disappointed that a few things made it to Venice or made it to New York that aren't coming here? Yeah, but that's like in anything in every year. But I'm hoping that I'll find a bunch of movies that I really love this year. So I'm very, very excited.
Yeah, pretty much the same. It's all about perspective and how you see things, and where you see them, and getting that opportunity to experience the festival, whether you're a first timer or someone like Matt and I have been doing it for a few years now. I say a few years, many. So it's all about how you look at things, and it can be critical, it can be positive, it can be negative. It's all really just a matter of opinion and perspective on things, and we don't know all the ins and outs of the politics, and also how things are kind of tied to certain release dates and schedules. So you have to give the programmers and the people involved credit for being able to assemble any lineup, especially given, post pandemic, and also now, with the strikes ongoing, that it's still happening. It's just a continually evolving thing. And we're getting a festival, and getting a festival is better than having no festival. And, yeah, we don't maybe have some of the bigger films like we did last year, but I'm sure last year there were a lot of people that were feeling the same way about not being able to see the Fablemans at TIFF or, Glass Onion. So it's an ebb and flow kind of thing. And there are some years that are more memorable or defined by something than others. And, expectations play a role, but then, you have to kind of check that entitlement and make sure that you're looking at it from the point of view of for us, we're getting to do this as accredited members of the press. So we're very lucky in that regard, that we get to watch movies that we are essentially choosing for ourselves as well, because we're our own bosses for this show. And I think that that's an important part as well, where we're not being told, oh, well, you need to, see everything in this category, or you need to, interview all of these people and miss out on these movies. We decide what we want to cover. And I think that's also a really important thing, because, there's a lot of people that get to cover the festival, but still have a mandate when it comes to, a producer or a studio or an outlet saying, okay, well, you have to watch this, and you have to review this, and, you have to, spend your day sitting in a waiting room, for a 5 to 10 minute conversation, or, working for a newspaper. And those things are great too, but there's something about just going and seeing what you want to, and having no, obligations in terms of what you're seeing, and us making our own decisions, and that enthusiasm coming through, even when we pick stuff that we don't necessarily like, when we watch the movie, but at least we can say we made our own choice to see that. Yeah. No one else can be blamed for that decision. So
absolutely. Well said, my friend. Well, thank you all for returning, or maybe it's your first time listening or watching the Untitled Movie Podcast. We really appreciate it. We'll be back with more frequent episodes on this show. We'll be covering Fan Expo, McDonald's bags, and McDonald's combos. We'll have more reviews over on Untitled Movie Reviews, which you guys can check out as well, for things like Gran Turismo and the first 2 episodes of Ahsoka coming up soon. We've also covered a lot of movies recently in the last month or so. What have we covered, Eric?
TMNT, Barbenheimer, Haunted Mansion. All your favorites are there. We'll also have a review coming up for Bottoms, Emma Seligman's new movie.
Heck yeah, which was a favorite. Her first film was a favorite of ours from TIFF during the pandemic.
Which also started as a short.
There you go. Everything full circle. Please go check us out on Letterboxd, which is Untitled_movies. And as always, my name is Matt Rohrbeck. You can find out more of my work around the You can find more. Find out.
Fucked around and found out.
More of my work around the internet, but mostly at UntitledMoviePodcast.com. And you can follow me on all those social medias at Matt Rohrbeck.
And I'm Eric Marchin. You can find more of my video reviews and interviews over on rogerstv.com/cinemascene. I have an interview with Passages director Ira Sachs, which I really am quite proud of.
Again, right at the end.
You sure did. You look great, though. And you can find me on all the social medias at EM6211.
Until next time, we need to find a new platform to record on, because this shit is getting ridiculous. If you're listening
to a key light. I need a key light.
Bye, everyone.